All right. Okay. No worries. Yeah. Sorry. I just had to just organize a few things for this, but yeah, I think we're good to go, man.
Well, that's it's quite an achievement these days because it doesn't appear to be easy. It's quite a ball ache, and there's often problems even when you have got it set up. So we seem to have a reasonable connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally, man. Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about a few things regarding personal development and all that stuff. A lot of this information that I hear from your videos, like I really
I'd tell you
understand
what
where
I'd
you're
like to
coming from.
do. I'd like to get the
Yeah.
camera position stable, because obviously what
Oh,
I
yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
are you a member of the Ascending Awaken Brave?
No, no, I'm not. No.
No, okay. So yeah, because I just checked and
Unless you mean your YouTube thing, then yeah, I am.
no, my existing channel has been deleted.
I saw. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and so
fucked.
I no longer have a presence on that. I have a new channel at
Yeah.
awakenbrave.com, and that's for members only, and we
Yep.
charge £10 per month, and so that's
Yep.
where all the videos go, and that's where the community is now growing, and
Okay.
yeah, so that's where I'll be from this point forward, because
How's it
YouTube.
going? How's the transition?
It's going nicely. There's been
Yeah.
lots of technical issues because we have created a brand new site, and it's kind of like a social media platform whereby there's a Facebook connection, a private Facebook page, there's a forum,
Yep.
there's a members chat, there's an area where you put your profile up, your picture, and some details and your contact details and all that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
then way to go. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. And so,
Okay.
how long have you been a member of the previous Awaken Brave?
Off the top of my head, I think 2 years. The video that actually got me onto you was that allegory to taking mushrooms on taking a train to the train station.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah, I remember that one. That one,
Yeah. That's the one
was
that
one of
got
my
me.
greatest hits.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that lures
over
him in.
200,000 hits that one had, and lots of people enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think that was the one that showed up on my feed, so I was able to click on it.
Yeah, cool. And
Yeah.
so you was enjoying the content ever since then.
Yeah, it's the thing I like about YouTube is it's really replacing television.
Yeah.
Whereas before we're forced information. We don't get to choose. But now with YouTube, you can pick your own celebrities, kind of. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
And
much more
yeah,
selective, and there's a whole lot more variety.
yeah, exactly.
And
And
that's
I find that really refreshing.
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, it's a marvelous thing because everyday media is just hypnosis. They are guiding you, manipulating you on a daily basis to comply with exactly everything that they want you to do. And so, if people finally, wake up and start looking at other avenues for information, then they will come upon stuff that they've never ever heard before in the mainstream, and that's with mainstream science, mainstream history, mainstream everything basically. There's a whole hidden agenda in the mainstream, and it's to
Yeah.
keep you absolutely in the dark about what this world is, what you are, and what their agenda is.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's you kind of lose a tolerance for that sort of stuff. You just, yeah, I don't really have time for that sort of thing. It upsets me. So I just kind
Yeah.
of,
So what other channels do you tune into? Because now the Awakened Brave's gone.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what?
I'm a big fan of what's his name? Leo Gura from
Yeah.
Actualize.org.
Yeah.
That guy is fantastic. He's so succinct with what he says. You have your own style, but he certainly does as well. And I really like the way that he just puts his information together. I find it also, it can connect to it like a wider audience.
Yeah.
Whereas but like the information that I get from you is more selective. You connect with like a not every, you can't connect with everyone, but you can connect with like-minded people. That's the impression I get.
Yes, I mean, with Leo Guru, he has a template. Hi, this
Yeah,
is Leo, and he's got his black shirt on with his black backdrop, and this
yeah,
is his signature, and he addresses something in particular on any given day. Whereas I drift around because it isn't as black as white, black and white. There's a
yeah,
lot of useful information that Leo gets, and I've noticed I've watched, many of his videos, and he has a tendency to do exactly what I do, in as much that he will contradict himself endlessly, because when you
yeah,
realize that you're in the paradox, there is no avoiding that, because
exactly.
you
Yes,
always slip in between two realities, this reality and the spiritual reality. And you see there's lots of, well, no rules and regulations really appear to adhere to the spiritual realm. Anything goes. And so if you feel a certain something about that and you express yourself in a way about that, well, you're free to do that, because it's absolutely different to this matrixial world. Whereas people that are steeped in the matrixial world, they will say, oh, you're contradicting yourself now, you said this and you said that. Well, the point is, about this world, everything is right and everything is wrong. And there's seems to be a corporeal existence, but then we know that there isn't. And so we've got all this stuff going on. Once people grasp that, then they can relax and just take the information, and if it works for them on that particular day, then that's all it's about, because the chances are it wouldn't
yeah,
work tomorrow or next week. It just depends where you are at any given time, and that's what I've tried to do in my videos. I've tried to touch people where they are at their particular time, and if anything I say helps them in a little way make certain realizations, then that's great. So that's basically how my delivery is.
right. Is that basically the purpose of why you do it, or I'm just curious.
What do you mean, purpose?
Uh, why you connect to all the people? What's the purpose behind it?
Well, the purpose is to enlighten
Is that
people, to
yeah? Is your
awaken
explanation?
people.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, because there's too many people out there which are simply husks, automata, the sheeple, deep in hypnosis, and people like me are trying to shake them from their slumber and wake them up. And so my angle is that to make people realize certain things about themselves, because if you say something like you're talking about the psychedelic trip, well, I mean, whatever Leo Guru has, whatever I have, the chances are nobody on the planet is ever going to have anything the same. Remotely similar, okay, but it's all down to the individual personality, you see. There's nothing exactly which is written. There's no place where you go where you can visit and it's the same every single time, and where somebody else can visit. Sometimes you may fall upon these realms where you can say, yeah, I saw this god in the cloud, or I saw the trees turn into this, but on another occasion you have a completely different experience, and so this is the difficulty of it. And so my discourses were always just trying to trigger a certain something, plant a seed within a person's psyche, and if it works, then they're ready to receive that particular message at that particular time. If it doesn't touch them, then they're not ready. And the whole point of it is, you see, we are ready to receive certain information at a certain given time. We can't receive all the information in the universe at a particular time because we're not ready for it. We have to evolve, and it's on our journey of evolution that we become ready. You see, yourself, if you watch videos, and they may not mean so much to you at any given time, you may feel that they do. If you watch them
I know.
again a few weeks later or a year later, then something will, wow, I didn't see that then.
I had that experience your videos, actually.
Yeah.
I've heard stuff that you've said, and I'm like, oh, there's probably something in there. And then I'll have an experience, and I'm like, this is the closest I can get to thinking what he was meaning. Like, I had an experience, and I'm like, that's probably what he was talking about. I I was able to connect my own experiences to what you were saying, because language is symbolical. That's the tricky thing with thoughts and language. It represents something, and this is to quote Leo Gura. It represents something it is not, and it's
Yes.
easy to fall into the trap of, like, looking at the finger instead of the moon. And I guess that's what information is, really. We have to decipher that for ourselves.
Yes, and there's very few people really like yourself who actually get this eureka sort of sensation at a certain point in your life regarding information. Well, when it really sits with you, when it really goes home, and you go, that's what that was about, and slowly you put the pieces together. Because most people, they'll just look at information and they think they are taking it on board, and intellectually they are making some sort of realization or rationalization, but they are not getting it on a deep-rooted psychological and spiritual platform. And this is the difference between the man in the street and the spiritually endowed person. They get it. And when you get it, you have a whole feeling about it, and it really means something to you. And when you have lots of these sort of occasions, then that's when you grow. That's when you are watering the kernel of the information and spirit that you have. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying. That's a very well way to put it. I actually have a quote that, like, I was meaning to read to you at some point, but it pretty much is going off what we were talking about. And it's to quote Alan Watts, and he says this, and you know that you can't really show them anything until they sorry, I screwed that up. And you know that you can't really show them anything they don't already know, and won't be able to show them anything else until they know it.
Yes.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't read that too greatly, but I hope you understood.
Yeah, get the gist. And the point is about it, you see, somewhere deep down, we know everything in the universe because we are the universe. But we have had our receptors for this information and the feelings that pertain to the information closed down. And so the thing is, what's happened to me on my journey, for the vast majority of the information that I've received, I've accepted it very, very readily. And I ask myself, how is it that I'm accepting this information? I mean, I'm looking at it logically, I'm looking at it rationally. I'm very good at deciphering bullshit. And I go, okay, yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound like such a big deal to me. Whatever these gurus are saying, it doesn't sound like such a big deal to me. I know that, I can feel that, and so what's the big deal? But the big deal is, Chris, that people don't seem to be able to get in touch with that certain something within themselves. When a guru says, close your eyes and just calm the mind, and within that space, that's your true reality. Well, superficially, on the surface of this, people will go, well, of course it's my reality. Close my eyes, I'm still here. But there's a whole great region within yourself which you can tap into once you have an allegiance, once you have a confluence with this certain something. Some people have it intuitively, other people have to work at it, and eventually through a lot of meditation and introspection, they will discover this, and the penny will drop. But the fundamental thing about it is that we all have it. It's just that what we have to do is we have to completely wipe clean our motherboard from all of the bullshit, from all of the programs, from all of the indoctrination and the hypnosis and all that sort of thing. We have to be able to decipher all the crap. And by the time you get pretty versed in this spiritual realm, then you go, my God, this world is, in actual fact, a fucking story. And the story is being read and dictated to us through the media and through the kings and through the queens and through the politicians. And every single one of them are reading from a script which is given to them by the powers that control the world and imprison us. Once you know that, it's an amazing feeling of emancipation, because just like that film, you see it as clear as day.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I think the true freedom comes from that exact same realization, but coming from within. So the story that you tell yourself is bullshit, and that's where true freedom comes from.
Yeah.
Personally, because it's just that everything outside is just a projection from what's inside. So you got to look inside, and understanding that that is all a story that you've created is really powerful. And it, you know, if you're not used to seeing that, it can be quite powerful.
Well, you say the story that you've created. I mean, here is another paradox, because whatever you take on board...
I know, it's a story. It's a story.
Yeah.
You derive meaning from no meaning.
And so, you see, going through this life, becoming a part of the play, we're given scripts by our carers, parents, teachers and politicians and all this sort of thing. And all we do is take on these scripts and we parrot fashion them throughout our lives. And if you ask somebody, what do you think about such and such? Then what you'll get is you'll get their memory delving into the deep archives, and they will recollect something that they've once heard, and then they'll repeat that. And if you say to them, I'm asking you, what do you think about this? They'll say, I've just told you. No, because somebody else said that. Mahatma Gandhi said that, or Krishnamurti said that, or, you know, Obama said that. What do you say about it? All of a sudden then, there's nothing to say, because they've never ever given the real you the opportunity to think for itself, because it's too immersed in all of its programs. And this is the thing. And so when you say then you have to look at your story that you've created, our story has been created by them. And so what we
own it.
Yeah, and we've took ownership of it. And what we have to do is we have to look at that and we go, well, that's bullshit. I don't know this. What do I really know? What has been my experience in this life? What can I say categorically that I know to be true because I've experienced it? And you'll discover it's very, very little. What do you know about the world? Oh, the sun's 93 million miles away. Really? What do you know? You don't know nothing. It could be 1,000 miles away. You've been none the wiser. And so, therefore, how, you know, say, broad is the moon? What's the revolution of the Earth? What's the reason for the sun seemingly coming up in the sky and going down? Any single thing that you ask yourself like this, you don't know. We can't possibly know. You see, and so this is why our whole life is just a bundle of things that other people have imparted to us. But when you get into this spiritual realm and you ask yourself, what do I know about myself? And then you say, well, the only thing I know about myself is that I am. And even René Descartes in 1650, he said the famous verse,
Therefore I am.
I think, therefore I am. But you see, what Buddhist monks or greater thinkers will say, he was wrong. Because it isn't when you think you are, it's when you don't think. That's when you are, because when you don't think, that's when you become what fundamentally you really are, just pure awareness. Without any consciousness, without any thoughts, you're just aware. And in this abyss, then there's nothing except this awareness, which seems to encompass everything.
The stuff that you're talking about now is something that I've just stumbled onto. Like in the last maybe 2 months, I've had small experiences, kind of like, I call them micro awakenings.
Yeah.
And they vary. So that a lot of it could be very psychological. So you see everything just as a lie, and you because you see it like that, you will immediately begin to disassociate yourself from, you know, the idea of who you think you are. And, you know, there's different angles that you can look at it. And I guess in the last 2 months, I've actually been introduced to this whole thing of the self I've heard it before, like the self existing behind all the thoughts and all that,
Yeah,
and I didn't know what to make of it until now, and I'm just starting to grasp what that means.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's the beginning of a long, long journey, and it's something that is quite remarkable, because when you realize that you are not the body, you're not the brain, because these things in actual fact do not exist. Even the scientists within our matrix tell us that they don't exist, and yet everything around is based on the existence of it. And so you can see then that we're living in an illusion. It's absolutely illusion. And so then if you think, well, hang on, all this stuff is apparently, it's all made of atoms and the atoms don't exist, it's just energy, then I am partaking in an illusion. And so, well, what's the purpose of me partaking in an illusion? What is it that's actually partaking in this illusion? If the body's illusion and everything regarding the physicality is an illusion, then what is it that's actually partaking? And then when you are versed in meditation, or if you have some spiritual experiences, awakenings, or this sort of thing, then the only thing that you can ever come to depend on is that you are awareness, having an experience within a fiction, which is our body. And when you look at that, that then is what's termed as the cosmic giggle, because you look at it and you go, what the fuck? This is the biggest con ever.
Could you repeat that? Like you said that we're like we're awareness in a fictional character experiencing itself?
Yeah.
Is that it? Or...
Yeah. Well, you see, this awareness, which is, consciousness, pure consciousness, it's just aware, and then consciousness...
It's not biased.
Sorry?
There's no bias towards any idea.
Well, consciousness has created everything. And so it's created all the paradox and all the contradiction and biases and non-biases. It's absolutely everything. There's nothing that could exist outside of consciousness. And so it's a very, very curious thing, the ability that consciousness has. And when we realize that we are partaking in this consciousness, and, you've heard this saying that we're all one, and it's bounded around all over the place. The reality of this being all one, well, we are part of the universe. We are part of this hologram. And if you look at a machine which shines out a hologram, then there's nothing in that hologram except energy, except light. And so if you are standing next to somebody and you have the facility to be able to communicate and think that you're real and everything like that, as soon as the projector goes off, then that's when your light goes out and there's nothing there. And so in this reality then, when we realize that we are a fiction, this body is a fiction, this whole world is a fiction, then fundamentally then there's only the awareness which remains. But the awareness, see, is a very lonely place. And some people have experienced this, and I've experienced it on many occasions through psychedelics. When you get so deep in a meditation or you have a psychedelic a trip, you realize that you are the awareness and you're alone. Because there's no you.
It's all we wear thoughts for comfort and ideas.
And so we consciousness has created other facets of ourselves to make it interesting, because it's a very, very lonely existence being the creator. And so the creator creates all these marvelous things.
Is this what it means to be truly independent?
Sorry?
Do you think that's what it means to be truly independent? That awareness, that you're not dependent on any concept or thought to be happy?
Not dependent on any thought to be happy. I don't think there's anything that we can depend on, so I will be in an agreement there, because as soon as you depend on something, anything else in this world, then you realize that this world is a flux. It's in constant change. And so if you want to depend on something, then you're always going to be let down, because whatever it is that you're depending on is going to perish, it's going to change, it's going to morph into something else. And when you look at yourself, and if you think that you can depend on yourself, if you're calling yourself this body. You absolutely can't, because your body's going to get old, it's going to let you down, you're going to have moods, you could fall into depression, you could start acting all erratic and this sort of thing, and then you can say to yourself on a good day, holy fuck, I'm okay today, I'm quite compos mentis today, but what the fuck am I going to be doing tomorrow? You know, when I don't want to get out of bed, or more agitated and I'm outside myself and all this thing. So yeah, we can't depend on nothing. The only thing that we can depend on is that there's an awareness, and this awareness apparently goes on forever after the demise of our body.
Yeah, that's something that I will have to revisit at a later point in time, because that's just flying past me, honestly. I don't have any experience that I can ground with that.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing, and it's a beautiful thing that you should say that, because if you think, you see, lots of people's egos, they won't allow them to say that I just don't get that, I've never experienced that, and so they will say, oh yeah, I get that, because they intellectualize something that the ego wants to grab hold of. The ego doesn't like to be out of control, it doesn't like not to know anything, it always wants to think it knows. And so the greatest facet that we can have for learning is to accept that we don't know anything, really. And there's just a mass of information out there, and the information is in constant flux. And so therefore, what you have to resign yourself to when you get long in the tooth on this journey is that there's nothing dependable, there's nothing out there, it's all illusion, and I'm here for whatever reason, because I am I and I am consciousness, then I know that this is in consciousness, so this must be my creation. As much as it is everybody else's, I'm you, Chris, and you are me. And this consciousness, that it is us together, because we share this consciousness, this is what's creating. And so therefore then, if we step outside of our physicality and absorb ourselves into the consciousness, then I can look at you and I can go, well, I've created you to have this conversation now. And I've created every single body out there to cause any number of mayhem to make this world a little bit more spicy.
Yeah, I do have an experience that I had today. I smoked a bit of bud and did a bit of Kundalini chakra thing, which I've never gotten into before. And I love how they explain it. Just the whole process, it amazes me, because it just seems like they completely understand like how the emotions work. Because everything that was like limiting, because they're like, let go of your fears. And I'm like, okay, I can let go, but only up to a point. And then they go, okay, the next chakra is the shame is holding on to the fear. I'm like, fucking hell, these guys have thought of everything. So they literally leading you to like emotionally liberate yourself. And it's full on. And it gets to that point where you're able to, I got a peek, that's all, of being behind exactly what you're talking about, that behind our filter of the ego is consciousness shining through that we all share.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's crazy. But yeah, I'm interested in seeing where it goes.
Yes, well, all this stuff which the greatest of gurus speak about, the Kundalini rising and the spiritual experiences and enlightenment and all this sort of thing, it's all premised on finally realizing that we're not a reality. And that is completely contrary to what we have come here to do. You see, I've asked the question, hang on, look, I'm consciousness, this is consciousness, and this is a non-reality. Who's created the reality? Well, we create the reality. We are creators. We've created everything that's not natural to this world. You see, so we are what we have bestowed upon our gods. Gods create the heavens and the earth. Well, look, our consciousness creates the heavens and the earth, because if there was no consciousness to perceive the heavens and the earth, then they wouldn't be there, would they? If there was no consciousness in this universe, then there'd be nothing in existence, because there's nothing to actually acknowledge the existence of anything. And so, again, a great paradox. Well, how can there be something? And if people say, well, if we weren't here on this world, then there would still be the universe. How can you say that? How can anybody say that? How would anybody know?
Could you answer what you were just saying? How can you be something if nothing exists? I think that's what you were going to say.
How can you be something if nothing exists? Then you can't actually be anything except just this pure awareness of being aware. What's in the awareness? Nothing. And it's a very... Sorry?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a very, very bizarre thing. And it necessitates experience to be able to grasp it, because language lets you down. The language on this planet is designed to deceive. It's a false language. It's a language which pertains to the enslavement of humanity. The language which pertains to you not finding the truth, because it isn't rigged up. Because when you have a DMT experience or a shroom experience or an enlightenment experience, you try to explain it in very, very crass language, stumbling and falling around. You just go, oh, I can't explain it. When you have this variety of spiritual experience whereby you know that you're everything. And how can you explain that to everybody when you say you know you're everything? Well, can you tell me a little bit more? Well, no, because there is no more. I'm everything. You're everything. Consciousness is everything. And so it's really, really perplexing. But when you feel something like this, one day on psychedelics or in a deep meditation or something, you will be in this pure awareness. And you won't be thinking, but there's something else that goes on, Chris. And it's a knowing that there's an existence. And that's all you can say. There's a knowing that there's an existence. And it feels very, very expansive and all-encompassing. And I've been in meditations like this. It's like a shiny blackness, just a shiny blackness, and the awareness is so crystal clear, it's so profound, and it encompasses everything, but there's nothing to encompass. Again, a paradox. When you wake up out of it, back into this world, you go, you've got to be kidding. You've got to be kidding, seriously.
You know what it's like? It's almost like the language that we use binds our understanding, like holds us back, because we don't like to construct sentences that directly contradict each other. But what you're saying in the realm of experiences, that exists. But if we bind ourselves to language, we can never really open ourselves up to the craziness that you can experience.
Yeah, because language isn't designed to do that. Language pertains to the matrix. It doesn't pertain to spirituality. But what I was trying to say is that why is it then that we find ourselves in this predicament whereby we are starting to crack the nut of reality, and we are making certain realizations through whatever channel that, hang on, this is all a dream, it's an illusion, it's a hologram, whatever you want to call it, it's a non-existence. Quantum physics say it doesn't exist. The whole thing is probability. And so this probability, it gets back to pure consciousness again. Pure consciousness is so vast in its intelligence that it's probable that absolutely anything can exist, because this is the nature of consciousness, to create galaxies and gazillions of planets and all this sort of thing, with probably all other sorts of life forms on them. And when you are reasonably versed in psychedelics or spiritual experience or astral projection, this sort of thing, when you encounter various spirits that are not of this world, then you go, okay, so there's all that sort of stuff out there that you can encounter in a different dimension, in a different level of consciousness. And sometimes, if you experience negative energies out there, and then you come back to this one, you go, whoa, thankful for that. I'm in safe ground. As long as I don't take those psychedelics, as long as I don't try to do this astral projection, I won't go out there and meet them. You see? And so therefore, this variety of consciousness, it keeps us in a very, very narrow parameter of existence and knowledge. And we know these narrow parameters via our senses are minuscule compared to what there is going on out there. But what we're trying to do now is we're trying to crack this nut, and we're trying to discover what God is, what the Creator is. And so via Kundalini raising, via enlightenment experiences, via psychedelics, deep meditation, all these sorts of things, we can tear open the veil of this dimension and we can peep beyond. And that is a very, very curious thing. Because when we do that, the information that we're privy to is so vast, it's so incomprehensible, it blows our fucking minds. That is the nature of consciousness.
Yeah, and that's another one that I'll have to revisit at a later time. But yeah, that sounds fucking amazing. Yeah.
It is amazing. It keeps you wanting to go on more and more and more. And you see people that take psychedelics.
It's also fucking terrifying as well.
Sorry?
I'm terrified at that prospect of like meeting negative energies out there. When
Right,
I can barely
okay.
handle...
Yeah, I'm just going to lead on to that now, because the whole thing about it is, you see, if you come to the conclusion that you are everything, like David Icke says, we are everything that has been, is, and will be. If you really get to grips with that and assess what that means, look at it and say, what does that mean? Well, your consciousness, this is what David Icke was saying.
Sorry, you just broke out there.
Oh, okay, sorry. David Icke and all the gurus, and many people, they're always saying, hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, they're always saying that we're everything, and there's nothing outside of our everythingness. What we're having here is some sort of psychedelic experience, some sort of dream. And so if you grasp that, which the ego doesn't want you to grasp, because the ego is part of this program. We're in this program. It seems that we have come here, our choice as consciousness, to create this domain for ourselves, to give us a break, to give us something to inspire us, to see the diversity of life. And it's a wonderful, wonderful, marvelous thing that has been created via consciousness. But what we're doing is, when we're here, some of us, we're everlasting trying to get back to where we come from. And there's so many people that will just tell you that I don't want to be here in this hologram, illusion, environment, whatever, because I know that I belong somewhere else. I know that I belong to something which is far greater than anybody could really grasp in its entirety. And when you listen to people who've had near-death experiences and have had wacky psychedelic experiences, and they go back to this place, apparently, where there's all spirits around, and the thing is very, very endearing and loving, and everybody's welcoming, and the familiarity is so beautiful, and people talk about actually talking with other facets of themselves, played out as their uncle or father or mother in this dimension. All this stuff goes on. Once you've been privy to all that sort of thing, then the fear has to start to dissipate.
Right.
And when you have a good grasp on your own psychology, you have to know that whatever fear comes about within you, you are creating it.
Yeah.
Nothing else. And that's when you realize the majesty of what you are, because it is entirely your thinking pattern that brings it about. And you can say to yourself, no, these thoughts just come. These thoughts of monsters and this, that, and the other. Well, where do they come from? They come from within you.
Is this what they mean when they say that we are all God? The fact that we have the ability to create everything that we...
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you look at your own fears then, the fears that you have are the fears of the unknown. And this is a particular trait of humanity. We naturally are afraid of the unknown because the operating system which we have, which is the ego, is responsible for our survival and our longevity. If we weren't afraid of doing stupid things like, climbing up a high precipice and, not really giving a fuck, then the chances are we're going to fall and we're going to perish. The ego and the operating system, it doesn't want that to happen. It wants longevity, because this is the end product of consciousness as far as this epoch or this dimension goes. Consciousness has created us to experience, and so therefore it's endowed us with this variety of operating system which protects this thing. But you see,
so what you're trying to say is you're trying to liberate yourself from the shackles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic probe.
What we have to do is we have to realise that there's certain fears that serve us in this egoic world. Those that protect us from things that are going to cause us physical danger. Now, the ones that only cause us maybe some sort of anxiety or stress, they're not going to kill us. They're not going to be the demise of this body. They're the ones that we've got to question, because...
Yeah, you're breaking up quite a lot. It's been about 3 or 4 times.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn my camera off and I'm going to leave yours on, yeah? Because that often helps. Did you hear that?
Nope.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, what I've done is I've turned my camera off because that often increases the speed.
Okay.
And
sure.
Throw me from what I was saying. Can you just remind me what I was saying?
Because you were breaking up so much, I wasn't able to hear the last minute.
Oh, damn.
It was quite fragmented.
Yeah, okay. So it was along... Okay, it was along the lines of... if I start breaking up again, just hold up a finger so I know that, we have to pause.
Gotcha.
Yeah?
Yep. We'll do that.
So this ego thing, it is the operating system, part of the program within this dimension, which has to be so out of its self-protection. But there's something that's come about via our programming, which makes us afraid of things that we shouldn't necessarily be afraid. And you see, this stems from our rulers, because they've told us about devils and demons, and they've told us that psychedelics are bad for us, and they tell us that we shouldn't daydream and we shouldn't fantasize and any number of things. What we've got to do is we've got to get a job, we've got to look down this narrow parameter of life, and we've got to abide by the rules, and then when we're old and grey, we will have a few quid, nest egg, and we can retire. It's all absolute bollocks. And so it seems to me that one of the parts of this puzzle, Chris, is that we come to fucking break that bullshit. We solve the problem as early as we possibly can in our lives and go to ourselves, I'm not complying with that, because that definitely isn't the right way to go. The right way to go is realise what the fuck we are. And we are not this hologram. We're something vastly over and above that. And so, instead of looking out and concentrating on all the feelings out there, turn it back round again, which they don't want you to do. This is why they so vehemently oppose psychedelics, because they allow you to see it and to feel it absolutely firsthand. And with one psychedelic experience, you go, hang on, that was a completely different world to what this world is, and we can be afraid of it because we've been told to be afraid of it. But I can tell you now, in all the psychedelic experiences I've had, probably about 30 or 40 up until this moment in time, I have never, ever, ever had one negative experience, because I know that it's all me, and I know that whatever I'm going to be experiencing is going to be of my creation. It's going to derive out of my train of thought in any given time. This is why they say that set and setting is so very, very important. If you are in an environment whereby you're going to feel other energies, that's not a good idea. If you are in an environment within your mind whereby you're so anxious about it because you're feeling about, all these demons and I'm going to lose control, this is the ego, I'm going to lose control. And when you start to lose control, then you're going to rebel against that, you're going to reject it, and you're going to find yourself in a difficult place. When you say to yourself, well, this is just fucking ego, bullshit, I'm going somewhere else, where ego shouldn't be allowed. You don't take your ego with you. You fucking leave that here. And you go with a pure open mind, pure consciousness and awareness, and you're open to the experience. When you do that, it will show you any number of beautiful things. And so that's what we have to do, really, if we want to emancipate ourselves from the fear of the ego. It's all down
Yeah.
to the programming of this dimension.
Yeah, that's very compelling. Very compelling.
It's
I like
really,
it.
really interesting because when you look at this world, it can be anything that you want it to be. And I've been engaged with my mate Guy regarding our psychedelic experiences. And when he was here, we had a very similar one on the beach. He saw the same God I saw up in the clouds, and he saw pretty well everything I did. And so we can say to ourselves, well, if our frame of mind is in conference with each other, we're mates, we're ready to embrace this situation, we're in a beautiful environment, we're going to have a nice experience, we're going to let go because we're confident that we're going to be okay, we've got each other, you know, if the shit hits the fan, therefore you can let yourself go, you can step outside the ego. And so we stepped outside ego and we saw a certain reality together because we was in that same frame of mind. But he's told me about scenarios being attacked by archons and all this sort of thing. And I'm thinking, well, I can't help thinking that he creates that. And how he creates it, how we create our realities, because whether he's being attacked by archons is just negative energy. It's a term that was used many, many years ago for varieties of energy. And so if we are afraid of these things and we want to consider, oh, if we see something that makes us scared, it's an archon. Well, no, forget about that. Forget about labels, because there are no labels out there. And if you experience something which feels negative to you when you're out there, if you're afraid of it, then it's going to become more negative because you are creating it, because it seems to stem from the facet of consciousness which is negative within you. You go into a psychedelic experience and you're taking your negativity with you. Like God, you're going to be creating that. If you take a positive attitude and vibration with you, like a God, you're going to be creating that.
Isn't there a bit of a paradox in that? Because when you get into a place of realization, you realize that the negative traits in you are just a projection. Like you're creating this negative, like the negative facet doesn't exist, neither does positive. It's all
an
It's
interpretation.
all, yeah, exactly. And so it's almost fractal in that sense, because you're explaining how, you know, there's like a negative aspect of the self, but then with more liberation you realize that all these ideas of what negative and positive is the actual illusion. It's yeah, I don't know what that is. Maybe
Exactly.
I'm the only one that sees it, but it's
No,
there's
you're perfectly right. You see,
something there that doesn't really.
there's something about this world that there is. It's not a polarity, but there is a diverse nature about it, and you have to have diversity if you're going to have something with complexity, and so therefore. There's everything here that we can experience, we can choose from, we can decide that we want to get involved with. We decide whether we want to put our belief system into it. And if you put, you see, this has been proven time and time again. If you put your belief system in a certain God, then the chances are when you have a spiritual experience, then you'll see that God, because that's your belief system. And Robert Wagner, one of the famous lucid dream experts, he's clear in what he states, that you go into reality, which is your belief system. And he's talking about his mother who has died, and his mother, her spirit, her apparition, whatever, is in existence in another dimension. And she's living in the same house with the same cat, and she's making a cup of tea, and she doesn't know she's dead. That's her belief system, you see. She didn't believe in anything after life, and so therefore, that's exactly what her belief, she's got what her belief system depicted to her. If you believe in Jesus, and you've heard stories about Jesus standing there, brilliant white light and all this, that's what you're going to get. If you believe in hell, then that's what you're going to get, because we are creating it, because we are God.
So ultimately everything is an illusion. Like we can't help but entangle a story around nothingness.
Yeah,
It's what the ego
yeah.
is. We can't.
That's it, and it's a beautiful thing when you realise that. You say, this is the whole thing then about the law of intention. If you decide that you want a certain something from this world, and you set your intention to do it, then that's what you're going to achieve. And we know this absolutely to be true, because just look around you. Look out your window. Look around your apartment or your house there, and you can see that there's doors and there's frames and there's chairs and there's ceilings and everything like this. Every single thing that you're going to be looking at, which is man-made on this planet, derived out of an intention. So therefore, then, you are God. We are God. Man is pertains to God consciousness, the creator. And so we create all this stuff. And so if we create the stuff in the physical, then why should we have a problem with creating things in the metaphysical? Why, just because we don't understand it? You see, look, if you took a person out of the Amazon jungle into New York City, then that may be a very, very terrifying experience for them if they never were aware whatsoever of the things that man can create. It would be terrifying for sure, because the ego would be completely out of sorts. If you have a psychedelic experience, ayahuasca or something like this, and you go into the spirit world, then the chances are your ego may be terrified also. But you see, whatever the mind is experiencing, the mind is experiencing via some avenue. And it may be, you see, we experience these things in psychedelic trips, because what we actually do is we tap into the deep unconscious, which the conscious mind isn't privy to. We tap into something which is called the collective unconscious, which Carl Jung used to speak about a great deal. We tap into a realm which is there because it pertains to the human being. Every single thing that the human being has ever thought about exists. It exists in this consciousness. It's not a corporeal thing, because there's some things that we don't bring into a reality. We bring into reality cars and planes via our imagination. We don't bring into this reality, like on many occasions at least, like shadow beings and monsters and all this sort of thing, because we don't want to include those into our world.
Okay. Don't we create shadow beings and monsters? I mean, there's a lot of gnarly shit going on in the world.
Well,
isn't that the negative energy somehow?
It's a very good question, yes, and okay, you're perfectly right. I was sort of leaning towards, we don't create them walking around our own rooms and everything, but our collective consciousness has indeed created what Ike calls the archons, the shapeshifters, which are manipulating the world. And I've looked at this from as many facets as I can, and I've looked at it from the facet that, hang on, I don't think anybody per se has created anything. It's the collective consciousness which is creating everything on this world, because the collective consciousness is too powerful for any small sector of society. And so what this small sector of society has done, in actual fact, they have hypnotized the world and manipulated the world into certain thought patterns. And so that's why we all think in this matrixial way. They know about that we are creators, and if we practice enough, and if we engage ourselves enough in knowing that we create via our thoughts, then that's what we can do. And so we can now say to ourselves that there's negative energies that run this world, that create these wars and manipulate everybody. Yes, there are. If we call them archons, okay, we can lend ourselves to doing that. Whether they're shapeshifters or not is anybody's guess. But whatever it is has been created via the collective consciousness.
Okay, one question I have, because what you were saying is essentially that we're getting manipulated by the people up top, and they're shaping our reality.
Yeah.
How long do you think it's been happening?
How long do I think it's been happening? I believe it to be have been happening ever since this world was in existence.
Okay.
If you look back at...
What about with tribes? Obviously, there wouldn't be like this whole global, everyone not conforming to one ideal. Obviously, with tribes, everyone would sort of be fragmented, and there'd be different perspectives and all that. I guess that's what culture is. So I can't really see, like, from the beginning of, since when there were humans, if there were tribes and all that, I can't really see how everyone would be sharing one mass delusion.
Well, everybody wouldn't be sharing one mass delusion because it would be compartmentalized. It would be down to the individual tribe. And so if you've got an expanse of land, let's say America, 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, whatever, then you're going to have all these nomadic tribes bobbing around all over the place. And you're going to have a hierarchical system because this is the nature of the human mind. It is hierarchical. There's a certain fundamental facet of the human being whereby most people want a leader. Okay, most people want a leader, and some people, very few, want to lead. So when you've got this natural propensity within a certain animal, it's a foregone conclusion that that's what's going to happen. And so if you look at it then, all the different tribes all over the world, then they've all had their chief, they've all had their shaman, they've all had their warlord and all this sort of thing. So these, then, you can say are the archons. This is the annoying thing about Skype. It's very, very tricky. And so if you look at the head of all these clans, and then if one head decides that they want more resources from the next clan, and they invent a reason as to go and to slaughter them all and take their women and children, well, this is what's been going on throughout the whole world forever and ever and ever. The only difference is now, Chris, is that it's been collectivized. And the collectivization has come about via the media. Since the advent of the media, whereby small sectors of people, tribes, politicians these days, world leaders, whatever, they're doing...
Isn't what you're saying is more of like of a symbiotic relationship rather than one domineering over the other? Like, they both kind of feed into each other.
Well, this is one of the things that I maintain is the reason why this world is like it is, and it won't change. And I'm going to have a word with Max Egan tomorrow, and this is one of the things I want to present to him, because all of his videos... Are you familiar with Max Egan, by the way?
No.
Okay, so he talks about all these issues that we've got, you know, from a psychological perspective and the world domineering perspective and all this sort of thing. And he considers that all we've got to do, people, is that we've got to start caring for one another. And I go, well, that's where the whole plan falls down, Max, because humanity has never cared for one another outside of their very, very small and close proximity. And this is why when you've got tribes, the tribe will care for itself up into a certain critical mass, which probably is something like 300, where one person can have the capacity in the mind to know and have a relationship with every single one. When it gets beyond that, strangers come about. And when you've got strangers... Okay. So I was just saying that when you've got tribes, it seems like they've looked at this and they seem to think that a critical mass of a tribe, which is going to be...
I heard that, yeah.
Conducive to itself is about 300. When it gets bigger than that, there's a capacity that breaks down in the human mind that we can't remember too many people. It becomes too much of an influx and stress on the mind, and it closes down. And it doesn't want to know 1,000 people. It doesn't want to know 25,000 people. It finds it far too overbearing. And so what we do is then we close ourselves down and we have our little clan, and then we start to make preferences for our little clan. And if anybody outside the clan wants to come into and upset our little apple cart, then we find objection to that. And so this is the whole premise of human nature. It doesn't want to embrace the whole world. The human being doesn't want to feel like they are one and embrace every single culture on this planet, and religion and facets of belief system and all this sort of thing, because we create our own biases. The biases are very, very strong. We create our own programs via our culture, and these programs and these cultures are insurmountable with ignorant people. And so this is why that we've got what we've going today. And albeit the world is in a very, very technical place with a massive amount of intelligence. There's not one single person that knows everything about anything. It's a collectivization. It's born out of our consciousness, with every single man and woman adding a little piece to the jigsaw puzzle to create the whole. And the whole, nobody understands. Nobody can see what the fuck is happening because there's too many fingers in the pie. You see?
Yeah, I can't argue with anything you said. I agree with everything you said, but the one devil's advocate thing that I would raise is my understanding of this whole process of emancipation from your own construct, your own ego. I thought the whole purpose of that would be to escape all these stories, and this what you were saying seems to still reside in that fairy tale land, and I thought we were trying to escape that and liberate ourselves, stop that from holding us back. That's kind of the impression.
Yes, some people are, but if you ask yourself the question now, Chris, and if that's your endeavour, and you walk by a homeless person sitting in the door, and he's freezing cold, do you go to yourself, oh my God, that person is me, and I should bestow upon him all the love that I would on myself? So you go rushing home, and you get all the clothes that you think would fit him or would keep him nice and warm. You get a load of blankets, you raid your cupboard, you get a sack, and you put all this food in, and you go and you give it to him. Are you going to do that? Is anybody going to do that? No. Why is that? It's because we still cannot get over this divide. Because there's this self-preservation, which is man's downfall, because ultimately it comes down to me. What about me? Where am I going to find the food? How am I going to clothe myself? How am I going to shelter myself? If I give all my stuff away, then what about me? Who's going to look after me? And this is the whole thing with the human species, is that it's a selfish species because we're designed genetically to be selfish. Richard Dawkins wrote a book about this called The Selfish Gene, and he clearly states in there with a lot of evidence that every single cell in whatever creature has one goal in mind. It's self-preservation. And it's going to do absolutely everything it can to preserve itself. Now, because the cell is a part of the mass, which is the body, then all the cells have to work in unison to protect that body. But you see, that's where the protection of the selfish gene ends, because it doesn't then extend itself to its brother or its sister or its parent or something like that, because in times of scarcity with food, it will make sure that it fills its own mouth first. And it will even get into a frenzy, a greedy, filling, because there's a scarcity. It won't be given a fuck about its offspring or its species. And you can see this throughout nature. And this is why Darwin coined the survival of the fittest. Well, in actual fact, he didn't say survival of the fittest. He made reference to the survival of a certain creature which was more adaptable to a certain environment.
Yeah, it's like the right piece to the puzzle.
Yes, and so it doesn't mean that survival of the fittest, survival of the strongest over you, I should be more greedy over you. It just means whatever's befitting to the environment, then that's what's going to survive. And that makes sense, doesn't it? And so when people talk about it's all going to be peace and love and yeah, we're all going to get involved, well, not unless there's a consciousness shift. And you see, consciousness pertains to the whole world, you know, let alone the universe. And so if you look at every single variety of species on this planet, then you will see that there's this selfishness there. How many creatures can you see on this planet which would give away everything that they've got for the benefit of something else? This is pure altruism, whereby you care for other creatures more than yourself. That wouldn't work. And I'll tell you why it wouldn't work is because...
One thing that I would say, I've been an addict for most of my life, so I've been a very selfish creature. So I guess you come to a point in life where selfishness doesn't really work anymore.
Yeah.
You kind of flip it around, and I'm not saying I'm not at that level, that that's unrealistic, and that like it's the piece to the puzzle kind of analogy works for that. And it's not something that many of us, including myself, would want to really think about, because you judge yourself for it. But I do notice that there is some inherent value in the wanting to help others. There is some, and that is purely selfish as well. So you can't,
Exactly.
it's a paradox, but it's it's something. And I find that there is less grudge against the world when you care less about yourself.
When you care less about yourself, yes.
Well, not care less about yourself, but care less about what you want to do and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Well, let's have a look at that statement then. If we care less about the self, if we realise that the self is a selfish thing and it's all about its own preservation, then when we start to get more spiritually inclined and then we say to ourselves, well, hang on, this tiny little dot in this huge cosmos, we're the only life form that we've discovered so far, and shouldn't we be treating every single life form with much more respect on this planet? Even in view of that we know no other intelligence or life form anywhere else in what we consider to be this infinite cosmos, we destroy ourselves and all of our creatures on a daily basis without batting an eyelid. And so when you've got that collective consciousness going on, there is no hope for man. And some people would say, oh no, it's because our leaders are doing all this. Okay, there's always been leaders. There's been leaders, like I said, from the tribe to the village, to the town, to the city, to the country. That's the propensity of the human being. One will always want to supersede the hierarchical position of the next. Until consciousness can find its way through evolution to overcome that, then it will never happen.
Yeah, like I was saying before about the symbiotic relationship between, the people at the it's not just one, like, you can't just depend on the top to change their ways in order for the system to work. It could change as well if you had the people, the subordinates, just changing the way that they look at things, and that could break the cycle very easily. But that's, like you were saying, like you've just been explaining, that's highly unlikely just because of our inherent nature of the selfish being.
Yeah, if you look at what we are as a species, and if you go back 2,000 years to the time of the Roman Empire, then what the world has become now is almost an exact replica of what the world was 2,000 years ago. America, it flies the eagle, the twin-headed eagle. It's got its governing body called the Senate, and it operates in a very, very similar way. And so all it's done is it's carried forward that same hypocrisy and self-serving governance format throughout this past 2,000 years. And if you go back 2,000 years before then, like I say, to the villages and this, that and the other, I'm pretty sure that there's a similar hierarchical regime in place. There's always going to be a leader, and there's always going to be someone that's got a problem with somebody else. And so why do we, in our infinite wisdom, allow ourselves to think so idealistically without looking at the logic and rationality of what we are as a creature? Why can't we accept that this is one of the fundamental bases of the human being, that really we don't give a fuck? We don't like our neighbour so fucking much. We're jealous, we're envious. We've got any number of negative emotion within us, which is always going to be rearing its ugly face to present us with a reason why we shouldn't all become one. And if we ever all do become one, and the only way we're going to do this is if we're so dumbed down, and this is the agenda of the New World Order, to get us all absolutely dumbed down, get us all chipped, get us all absolutely dependent on the state, so we dare not do anything else except comply with their wishes and commands. Now, if that is the case, then there is no more wars. Look at all the people that have died in all the wars for the last 200 years. Millions and millions. If you do the figures and look at the creation which would have took place had those people been living, then we would now be in a very, very existential crisis, because we couldn't cater for the amount of human beings on the planet. We're struggling to cater for us now. And you know, when you've got continents like India and Africa, which are absolutely starving, and now, even now, we don't give a fuck. We'd rather spend the money colonising Mars or doing ridiculous bullshit around space and all this sort of thing. We're prepared to let our own humanity, facets of ourselves, perish in absolutely hideous ways. We're prepared to let that go on every single day. There is no hope for man. Absolutely, there is no hope for man. Whatever way you look at it, even if we become so benevolent and we want to look after every single child on this planet, what's going to happen? Where are we going to put them all in the end?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of variables for everything to work, but yeah, I can't disagree with what you're saying.
The thing is, there's no right and there's no wrong, and you can travel down your path of thought as an experiment to see what your outcome is. Like this Jacques Fresco, he had this utopia where he worked out, you know, using computers and artist impressions, how this utopia could be beautiful and everyone could be living together. All right, Jack, well, what about in 1,000 years' time? When the people are crawling over this planet like ants on top of one another, what are you going to do then in your utopia? Then you say to yourself, well, okay, what we have to do is then we have to have some sort of a birth control on the whole world. Okay, so you put a measure of birth control in. And so a level of dictation comes into the whole of humanity that you can only have one child. And if that child should perish before it's matured, then you're allowed to have another one. And so you get this level of abstract dictatorship and governments over the human being. Well, when it comes to that level, can you imagine what the level of governance is going to be with every single other area? That one person shouldn't use more resources than the next person, and you shouldn't be destructive because that's against your fellow man. Look, by the time you've got that level of governance coming in, which is controlling what we do as a natural human being, which is to give birth and rear families, when you've got that taken away from you, can you imagine what else has been taken away from you?
Yeah, there's just so much to unpack when you look at the world, and I guess my attention right now is focused inwards, because I can't help when I look outwards to project my own emotions. So I need to better understand them before I can start distributing judgments and all that, because that's all the judgments that I project onto the world, I imprison myself with as well. So I'm really looking inwards rather than focusing on all that, because I can't really control any of that. I can control what's in.
Well, I mean, I beg to differ whether you can actually control anything that's going on inside you. And the reason why this is, you see, you've struggled with addiction, okay, for so long. So therefore, there's something within you which has been an adversary to you all of your life, or, you know.
Let me rephrase. It's not control, like dominate or anything. I guess the best word to say is accept, because I look at the past and I think, look, nothing could have really turned out differently because all the variables was there. I was always going to make that decision. And, you know, it's hard for me to accept, you know, that what is and couldn't have been any other way. But that's kind of where I'm going now. I'm exploring that. I don't have like a complete, you know, connection with that, but that's where my gut's leading me, and that's kind of where I'm going.
And so what was the addiction, if you don't mind expressing in this video?
It changed. It was alcohol, weed for a while. That got me when I was young, probably when I was 20. Way too much weed, so I got a bit, not crazy, but I just wasn't prepared to deal with that shit at that time, and I was very unstable because of my addictions.
Right.
So I got off that and started drinking. Drinking sedated my mind, so I was able to reassimilate into this, you know, into the world. And now I've started exploring these again at the age of 30, and it's been very, very interesting because a lot of the things that I wasn't ready to look at that time. Okay, yeah. All right, just 1 second. Cool. Yeah, I'm just going to have to move over. Mrs. wants to go to sleep.
Okay. So you're in Australia?
Yeah, Melbourne.
Melbourne, okay.
Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been there.
This is more comfortable. Much better.
Right.
All right. We're ready to go.
And so when we look at that, when we look at what we are a collection, an accumulation of all of our experiences. That's the only thing that we are. And these experiences are memories. And so we are a collection of something that doesn't have no corporality to it. And so this is quite kind of very, very befitting to the non-existence of the human being or the material universe. When you look at yourself and you accept that, hang on, what is it that I actually am? Well, I seem to remember that I'm a carpenter, I'm a bus driver, I'm a husband, and I'm a father. All these things, they're memories, aren't they? They're thoughts that you can recall via your brain, supposedly. And so if, for instance, you had an accident and your memory was lost, then what could you say you were?
Yeah, I guess we can go back to awareness is a good
base.
So
the only thing that you will be able to know, because all your memory is completely gone, somebody may tell you that you're a human being and you're a husband and you're a dad, and you go, oh, I'm a human being, I'm a husband and dad. You don't know that. Somebody just told you that. If your memory has been lost of the birth of your children, you don't know your children standing in front of you or your children. So again, it comes very, very peculiar. And so ultimately then, we can rationalize and we can theorize and we can have certain ideologies of any number of things that we want to project onto the world. We're only ever projecting what we fantasize our story to be. And sometimes we get involved in trying to create the story that we want it to be. For instance, me, with all my videos, I wanted to create a small collection of like-minded people where I could speak like this to you because it's nurturing to the soul. I've done this. I am my own God. I've created what I've done. I've created what I wanted to create when I decided that I'm going to come here. You know, it took me 54 years and now I've done it, but those 54 years needed to have been spent on this journey to make it seem like it's a real gem. For all the hardship I've travelled and all the information I've gathered, you know, and all this sort of thing. And now I've finally got here and it's made it all worthwhile. And so This is what we do. And I just don't see that this world can be anything other than what it is at any given time. Just like you and I couldn't be anything other than what we are at that particular time. And that is the extent of our experience.
But but that kind of, that doesn't mean it could be just one thing, because it's completely subjective and it's completely dependent on what your perspective is, which is infinite.
Well, your perspective isn't infinite.
Really?
Well, I mean, look at this. Your perspective is born out of your experiences. How can you have
totally. But when you're able to transcend that and see that there is consciousness shining behind the structure of the ego, or the filter of the ego that our consciousness looks through and relates to the world, when you're able to see that, there is, you're able to drop it for a second, and I guess that's what I was talking about.
You see, when you look at these gurus, and
because you were saying before about creating the moment, and I guess that's what I mean. We are all creators, and we can allow our past experiences, or i.e. our ego, or the structure of our ego, to determine what we see, or we can step out of it and explore a myriad of other perspectives that we could adopt, I guess. We need to wear something, and that's kind of...
Yeah, well, if you look at your position now, and if you say, well, I'm not happy with my life now, I want to be another Chris, then how are you going to go about by being another Chris? You are going to have to call on all of the resources that you have gathered being Chris. And so it's a paradox again. How can you be something...
Really paradoxical.
So you could never be anything other than Chris, because the Chris, whatever you consider Chris to be, is a collection of all the experiences that you've ever had. And all those experiences are going to be the launching pad from whatever you do this next hour, this next week, this next year, because it all stems from you as Chris. And so I don't believe that we really have any free will to any great extent. I think we probably have about... less than 5%, and the free will pertains to that you can scratch your right ear now, and you can decide whether you're going to go to the toilet now or in 20 minutes time. This sort of thing, it's very, very limited indeed, because what actually you are, if you look at it from the matrixial perspective, you are a collection of animals. It is reputed now that we are about 65% living organisms that dictate the way this body operates. It dictates the food it wants, it dictates the amount of rest it gets and the exercise, any number of things. We are run by a gazillion little creatures. And so when you start to look at, me, Chris, who the fuck's Chris? Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck is anybody? You're just a concept. You're just a name. You're just a fucking non-reality. And this is it. And, people don't like to hear this on lots of occasions, because their ego tells them that, I can go and get a better job if I want to. No, you're going to go and get a better job if your experience dictates to you that you're going to do that. Because you don't exist.
Yeah, it's super paradoxical. And I kind of got caught on one that was, we extract a meaning from that which has no meaning, and that's always kind of blown me away, because just like you were saying, there's plenty of other ways to say it, and you put it pretty well when you said that we are consciousness experiencing itself through a fiction.
Yeah,
and that's the same thing essentially. And yeah, I don't have an answer for that, but it's fascinating, and I guess all what it can show you is the ridiculousness of the story that you hold as well.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's you can there are times that I can see that they are arbitrary distinctions that I have in my mind, and like the power that I connect, the values that I connect to certain segments of my life or concepts that I do that to is completely arbitrary. And I base a whole lot of my life on the set values and of the concepts that I hold onto. And yeah, so I see where you're coming from. We definitely are determined by all the things that make us us. But I still think that I still have this suspicion, a suspicion, that's all it is, that there's just something when you're able to step back of that. And right now I am making a story up again. So there's just no way around it now as we speak, because we're just conveying stories to each other.
Yeah.
But on an experiential level, when we go away, we can enter a place where I feel that we can emancipate ourselves from this structural behavior that we've adopted through our past experiences.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from you again if you ever achieve that.
Yeah.
Because
I just got a hunch. That's all it is. I
I've
don't
looked at
really know.
myself long and hard, Chris, and I haven't a clue anymore what I am, other than just a fiction. And the fiction is compiled by arbitrary occurrences which at any given in time are going to make me into something else. For instance,
Yeah, but isn't that liberating in a way?
it is liberating, yes.
Yeah.
It's perfectly emancipating, and I really love it. Just to know that, you see, fundamentally, what
You're still going to have a program to run on at the end of the day. You can edit your program
yeah,
through this
yeah,
state of being.
we are the
You can
program,
heal it.
and that is all that we are from the day we were born. We were born on a motherboard, and the motherboard downloaded our program. And so this is just how it is. And if we realise that, then we can look at it a couple of ways. We can think like, well, I'm completely a deterministic creature, and so anything I do, I can absolve myself of any responsibility. Well, you see, you can do that at your own peril, because if you do that, then you're going to be in a very sticky territory as far as this matrix is concerned. What you have to do is you have to realize that you're a paradox. And on the one hand, if you look at yourself and know it to be completely deterministic, if you act in a completely deterministic way, whereby you throw anything to the wind, and if you go, fuck it, it doesn't matter what I do, whether I don't get out of bed tomorrow, whether I, murder my neighbor or whatever, because that was always going to be, and so that's it's not a good place to be.
That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that we are creators, just as our set circumstances create that. When you get out of that, you can create free from those things. So there's, like you said, there's just two sides of the coin that you can look at this from.
Yeah, so if you look at it then from that we are completely deterministic, then we don't have any free will, then that's one way. But if you look at it then that you do have free will and that we are creators, if you look at okay, so yeah, we're creators. Okay, how am I going to be creating? Well, whatever business that you've got, you've created that, and you create whatever it is that you make or produce in your business. And so therefore you can say, well, I'm acting out my godliness, and I can be responsible for the birth of children. So I am acting out my godliness again, because I am making my son or daughter in my image. And that's what God is supposed to have done to the human being. And so where's the difference? We're being creators. But you see, this is the whole thing with philosophy. We will never ever find the answer on the fundamental basis to the universe, because there isn't one. Other than the fact, in my experience now, is that the universe is a paradox. And because the paradoxical nature of something, then therefore you can never determine what it is, because 1 minute it's this and the next minute it's that. And you see, when you look at the quantum world will tell you exactly the same. The world's a paradox, because it will tell you that we seem to have found something which is called atoms. And
is that what you think? Is that what you think they meant when they said, if you see Buddha on the road, kill it? The fact that the world is so paradoxical, like at 1 minute it means this, and the other minute it can mean the complete opposite.
Yes. I don't know what that little parable means, but again, it can be interpreted in many ways. But when the quantum physicists look at the atom, and they say, well, we think we've found something. It's an energy. Only thing is, like with this energy that we've found, it seems to have a mind of its own, because it comes in and out of existence. Where it goes, we've got no idea. It seems to go into another parallel universe. And so therefore then, that is the absolute paradoxical, whimsical nature of the universe, and they say the only thing that they can really discern from observing these particles is that it's all about probability, because there is no particle as such. The particles only come into existence when they're observed by consciousness. You're familiar with the double split experiment?
Yeah, I'm also familiar with there being a bit of a mistranslation in the experiment from
you're always going to get misinformation, disinformation, because there's certain bodies, power structures out there that want to cling on to their autonomy. If they go full-blown ahead with like that particular theory is right, then what does that mean to them? It means that they've lost their autonomy in an instant, because if more people start believing that this world is an illusion, then their power, their grasp on us breaks down, doesn't it? When you look at all the information, doesn't matter what you look at, Chris, what you've got to also do is you've got to look at what possible source could this information derive out of. Knowing that we are on a prison planet, knowing that every single thing that is produced in the media for the better part, and all the machinations of government, have one single agenda, and that's to continue our imprisonment. And so when you look at this information, you've got to bear this in mind, because the CIA have massive operations of misinformation, disinformation, whereby they are absolutely trying to perpetuate the perplexive nature of the paradox, because they do not want anybody other than themselves to know what's going on.
Okay, yeah.
So it's really, really bizarre. And every single way you look, you just think, well, there's no truth. The only truth that I have concluded in my life is that there is no truth. And there appears to be something, and this is the awareness, and this is the only thing that I or any other philosopher on this planet has ever concluded. As far as reality goes, there is something that is aware, and over and above that, there is nothing that we can depend upon.
Yeah, everything else is just guesswork.
Yeah, but you see, I don't want to bring us down in that... oh, goodness me, you see, some people, they can accept this information like water off a duck's back. And this is
It's kind of like... It's nihilism, and Leo Gura put it quite well, because he said nihilism is a half-assed enlightenment, because, and Alan Watts have said it as well, like, if you're just nihilistic and you take pain away from the message that life has no meaning, then you haven't taken it to its ultimate conclusion, because when you do, you realize that because it has no meaning, all the shit that you've believed that's held you back has no meaning as well, meaning we are creators and we're able to, that frees us up as well. So
yeah,
it's just,
the whole concept with nihilism, when people talk about it like Sam Harris or these varieties of intellectuals, then they would always sort of slant on the edge of like Nietzsche, whereby there is nothing in existence. There's no purpose to humanity. Humanity is an abomination, and we're better off all dead, and all this sort of thing. Well, that's a facet of nihilism that I don't want to get involved with. What I get involved with is knowing that this is an illusion, knowing that I am an illusion, knowing that I am a creation of my own fantasy as consciousness, looking around at this world and seeing what I have created. I've created the bees and the birds and the ants and the snakes and the lizards and the spiders and everything, and I look at my own marvelous creation. And this may sound very egotistical. It may sound like there's some sort of messiah complex going on, but if you look at consciousness and you appreciate what consciousness has done here, you steer away from the facets that you don't find enjoyable, because at the end of the day, we've come here to do something. If it is your desire, if it was your desire to come here to have a hell of a life, like my old man had, dying in depression, having been in it for about 15 years, you can go to yourself, well, wow, why would anybody choose that? But if you start believing in that, we're reincarnated beings and we choose our parents and we choose our life, then we've chosen everything. And if there's no right and wrong, then ultimately, whatever we choose to do, it doesn't matter, because it's only an experience. And all experiences are absolutely equal as far as consciousness goes, because it doesn't have any morals, you see. So what I do is I look at this world and I absolutely immerse myself in what it is to be a human being and the natural aspect of the glory of the world. And even though I'm a nihilist in that I am convinced that there's nothing in existence, it's a beautiful illusion. And
it's because you're a
I'm sorry, I missed that from it's because you're...
right, it's because you're... let's see if I can regain that train of thought. It's because when you're completely in the world around you, whether that's in nature or whatever, it's because... No, I've lost it. So we may as well...
Well, that
do something else.
No, it sounds very interesting. So I'd like just to ponder it a little bit more and just to see if it comes back to you. And so basically I'm saying that, okay, it's all a hologram. And when you take DMT and you look out your window, I'm telling you, man, it's a freaking hologram, because you see you just see everything, every single thing, what is here. Before you take DMT, you see it change into something slightly different. Like all the buildings, they go absolutely pristine, like Lego. And the cars, they start to look like Scalextric cars. They've got this energy, vibration about them, which is a non-reality. And all this sort of thing. And then when you come out of it, you go, where did I go? What happened? Oh, your mind started interpreting things a little bit different. Well, I've been in many scenarios where the consciousness interprets this world in a different way, but the fact of it is, you see, this world isn't in any particular way. And for instance, I was speaking
like
the other
dreams,
day.
I guess.
Yeah, like dreams. And so there is no material world, and there is nothing actually what it appears to be, because we all perceive via our levels of consciousness what this world is. Now, can you consider how a blackbird perceives the world? What is the blackbird going to see? We know for a fact that we only see things invariably when we have a conscious awareness to them, when those things actually mean something to us. We can walk down a city street, and if we think to ourselves, I'm hungry, I'm going to get a burger, then the only thing you're going to be thinking of really on the way is a fucking burger. You're not going to be paying attention to the hundred of shops that you've seen on the way. And if someone says to you, what did you pass on your way? If you don't walk that road every single day, the chances are you would have no idea. Or maybe you'll say, oh, I think I saw a top shop. And that's about the extent of what our awareness is. And so our awareness is entirely governed by our needs. And so therefore, a blackbird's needs is far different to the human beings. So therefore, their world will be completely different.
Yeah, the their set of values and everything would be completely different based on their needs. Yeah.
Yeah, how they hear it, how they see it. They've got different ears, different eyes, and how they feel it, because they're covered in feathers, and so they don't feel the temperature changes like we do. This world, there is no one world. There is as many worlds as there are various levels of consciousness. And so therefore then, if there's no world per se, then we can have to say, well, it's all an illusion created by whatever consciousness is experiencing it, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've said in many videos also, Chris, that there's 7.5 billion worlds, and people go, no, of course there's not. There's one world, and there's 7.5 billion people with consciousness. No, because if you get 100 people in a room and you ask them to write down what they consider this world to be, then the chances are there's going to be a vast discrepancy between all of it. If you ask them to look at the landscape and write down or express what they see, there's going to be a vast discrepancy of what they see. With the variance of the lights and the shades and the hues, whether they pay attention to the grass or the clouds or the wind blowing through the bushes and the trees. We don't see the same world. We're not in the same world.
But it's quite interesting that there's that archetype argument that, there's that I haven't really experienced this, but I've seen a lot of people talk about it, and it's the archetypal experience, and it's connected to the something consciousness, and everyone experiences a similar archetype. Has a similar archetypal experience based on certain factors.
An archetypal experience.
Because they're all similar. Everyone shares similar, like the motherly values and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at
there are similarities.
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, there's this archetypal things that Jung would talk about. But if you look at a child who never had a mother, for instance, the baby was given away at birth, and it went into a children's home. And so, therefore, it was brought up by carers. And Tuesday, Martha will be caring for her. And on Wednesday and Thursday, Sarah will be caring for her. This, that, and the other. So she would grow up without having a mother. She would only know a relationship with carers. And so if you asked her what's her archetypal description of mother, then it's going to be very, very different to someone that grows up in a nurturing family with a real mother. And so when you look at things like this, then you can see that nothing stands up. Absolutely nothing stands up.
I would counter that with saying that, with regards to that, we could take it a little deeper with the similarities and go, everyone looks for distinctions in the world to make sense of it, and everyone wants to do that. So there's so many different outcomes based on the complete different experiences that we all have, but we all have that similar attitude or that similar programming, whatever you want to call it. We all want to know the truth, or think we want to know the truth, and we all try to make sense of the world by distinguishing differences within it and relating it like that. And you can get many different outcomes, but I think the approach to life, you can find some common ground there.
Yeah, again, very, very broad, because if you look at people like Mark Dice with his little video YouTube site that he's got, he goes around interviewing people in California. Have you seen him?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so is this the American guy? And it's kind of like...
What's his name? I'll write it down.
Mark Dice.
Mark Dice.
And he interviews people, and he asks them very, very rudimentary, mundane questions about the world. And it's absolutely shocking to see the vast majority of the people that he asked. Well, we don't know about the vast majority, but the people that he's presented in the videos, it's stunning how their lack of basic knowledge about this world is. For instance, people who are asked something like, you there? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I won't. I won't elaborate on that because it diverts. But suffice it to say, there's many people, Chris, that don't want to know anything about this world. All they want is people to tell them
Comfort.
what. Yeah. They
Yeah.
just want comfort. And so, if you could say, though, well, some sort of archetype or feeling is comfort, yes. Because the vast majority, that's all people want. And this is why the world is in such a state in the Western world, because we've been given too much comfort. And the reason why we've been given too much comfort is because the leaders know that when they give us bread and circus, when they've got our basic needs, which is food and entertainment, catered for, they can have free reign with the rest of the facets of what it is to be a human being. Because we will trade those off. If you give me comfort, you can fucking push me and pull me in any shape you want. As long as you've got a job for me and you've got a burger joint or fish and chip place on the corner, as long as you provide me with these basic amenities that I want to satisfy my base instinct, then you can put me in prison. To a great extent, like has been done.
Yeah, there's another gripe that I have with this sort of thinking, because you've also said, and I guess this is what we're talking about when we speak about paradoxes, but you also say that we project our reality onto the world that we see, and I can't help but seeing that, even though it may be true, like it may be an accurate depiction of what's happening, I can't help but think that there's a slight like negative tone or resentment towards that to you when you describe that. And I can't, like, my intuition would say that's a projection from something within that's at unease.
A projection from me onto the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's my intuition, because that's what I would see in myself.
So can you clarify that?
I'm projecting as well.
Yeah, when I'm talking, of course, everything. What it doesn't matter what I'm talking about. Of course, it's all a projection. Yeah. Because, like we discussed, what I'm saying to you now is entirely based on my experience, and it's been my experience to gather up a certain amount of information. And it's been my experience to encounter the human race in a particular way. And if a person has encountered the human race in a negative way, then of course that is going to be a part of their projection. If a person has been brought up in a beautiful family whereby they've never had any pain,
but you've also agreed that negative and positive, like those things, when you get to a certain place, have no real value. They're arbitrary distinctions that we create.
Yes.
But based on that, this whole meaninglessness thing, that would have no real bad meaning to it at all. You're just projecting that negative meaning onto it.
I'm just playing a part. I'm just role playing here. Just like you are, you see. And so in all of my videos, well, the vast majority of them, I don't know how many you actually watched, Chris, but I would always be saying, don't believe a single word I say. The reason why I'm saying this is, people, because I don't believe a single word I say. I will not stand by anything I say. And the reason why I won't, because I know it's only my subjective opinion based on my subjective experience in this world. And it's entirely different from every single one of you. So what is my truth isn't your truth. And if I want to get angry about serpents and fools and this, that and the other, then what you have to understand is, when you look at me, that of course I'm projecting, because what I'm doing is I'm displaying my experience. I can't do anything else. I'm not the sort of person that recites what other philosophers have said, or what other gurus have said expansively. I may add the odd quote to make a point, but at the end of the day, what I'm about is I'm role-playing. Chris. I'm just living out my fucking story here, and I enjoy talking. I enjoy engaging with people, and I think it's really, really important for people such as us that we are expressive. I'm expressive. I can engage a person indefinitely, and so therefore, then, what am I doing, Mr. Aaron, when you're making your videos and you're engaging in your Skype conversations? All I'm doing is entertaining. I'm entertaining you for as long as this Skype session takes. You're entertaining me. We're serving each other a purpose. When I put this video up onto the new site, it's going to be a very entertaining conversation for the people. And so at the end of the day, what's going on? Entertainment, mate.
On my part, I would say it's a little educational as well, because I've been looking forward to speaking to you, because a lot of what you say makes sense, and I value being able to relate my experiences and have it, have your take definitely on it, because it's really interesting to me. Yeah, but I guess you could argue that is a role. Well, I can't see it as clearly, but yeah.
I mean, I'm always appealing to my viewers to come forward and engage with me, because I want to know who you are. I want to know your story. And this is something that satisfies my soul. And so because I get satiation from it, that's why I've put myself in this position. Like a lighthouse beaming out in the darkest of nights, attracting things that seek light, whether it's moths or whether, it's any other creature. This is what I get the greatest enjoyment from. I don't have a relationship with their partner, and haven't had for 5 years, because at my time in my life now, I wouldn't get anything like the same level of satiation from that as I do engaging with my viewers. And so this is what my role has become. I'm just acting out my particular part, and I'm appealing to other people that want to be engaging with my particular part, with whatever facet I'm presenting on any given day. And you'll know that I can present many, many facets. And if you're like the vast majority of my viewers, then you would have been upside down on occasions with where I am now. Hang on, he said fucking something last week, and now he's saying something completely different. He had a beautiful disposition last week, and now he's acting like a cunt. What is this guy? Can we define him? No, you can't define me. We're indefinable. But you see, what I do is, Chris, I embrace my indefinability, and I'm not afraid to do that, whereas the vast majority of people, they are, because they only feel comfort behind their persona, and they don't want to step outside of their persona. They don't want to take their mask off and reveal the real you, because there is no real you.
Yeah, it's very vulnerable, and I've experienced a lot of resistance when you start to be aware that the self is an illusion. There's a lot of I've experienced a lot of turbulence.
Yeah.
In that process. Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is Chris, we've been going for nearly 2 hours now, and this is about the length of a video that anybody's really going to start engaging with. And so I'd like to finish this up here. And so we'll say goodbye to the viewer for the time being, and then I want to continue the conversation a little bit when the recorder is off. So thank you very much, Chris. It's been absolutely brilliant. Really loved it. And so bye for now.